In order to explain what income inequality is, we first must understand what income distribution is. Income distribution is the way income is divided among a country's residents. One reason why we want to pay attention to the distribution of income is because of its relationship to poverty. If income is distributed unequally, more people will live in poverty. Another reason is that it is tied to economic growth. There are two ways we can look at income distribution. One way is to divide the population into several equal-sized groups and measure how much each group earns. The other way is to divide income into equal-sized intervals and to ask how much of the population falls into each interval. If we look at the first method in a way other than with action figures, it might look something like this, where you have 5 categories, each representing 20% of the nation's population. Then it would display an average of the household income for each of the categories. In this case, it's listed from the lowest all the way to the highest. The second method would show us intervals of income and the percentage of the households in each. In our example here, we can clearly see that there is income inequality. When we want to compare income inequality amongst countries, the measure most frequently used is the Gini coefficient. And here's Mahmoud to explain to you exactly how that is calculated and how it's used.
Thank you, Ricardo. To get to the Gini coefficient, first we must construct a Lorenz curve, which measures the income distribution in the economy. To do so, we plot the percentage of total income on the vertical axis and the percentage of households on the horizontal one. We divide both axes into quantiles, which measures income distribution from poorest to richest households right here. This 45-degree line represents an economy where everyone in the population earns the same amount of income. We call this line the line of perfect equality, although in reality it is impossible to reach perfect equality. Now let's plot the income distribution data for the United States in 2009, which would look something like this, representing a Lorenz curve. The further away the Lorenz curve extends from the line of perfect equality, the more inequality we have in the economy. But now let's say we want a numerical representation of this area between the two lines in order to compare the degree of inequality between two economies. That's where the Gini coefficient comes in handy. It summarizes the degree of income inequality based on the size of the Lorenz curve. It has a maximum value of 1, which is reached when the Lorenz curve extends to include both areas A and B fully. On the other hand, its lowest value is 0, which is the Gini coefficient of the line of perfect equality. The simplest way to finding the value of the Gini coefficient is by dividing the area A by the sum of both areas A and B. We can find the area B by dividing the area under the Lorenz curve into rectangles and triangles and calculating their values using simple geometry. Once we've done so, we subtract the area A plus B, which we already know has a value of 0.5, by the area B in order to find the area A. We plug in our numbers into the formula in order to find our Gini coefficient, which in this case has a value of 0.43. Now that we've established an understanding of how income inequality is measured, Adrian and Joey will explain to us the effect of income inequality on economic growth.
I mean, if you don't have money, there is no growth. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense.
Sorry.
If you don't have enough money or you live in an area where it's low income, there's no growth coming out of that.
The accumulation of physical capital can and will lead to a higher saving rate, which significantly will affect economic growth in a positive light. A country with a higher saving rate will have a higher steady state level of income per capita, and a country that raises its savings rate will experience a period of transitional growth as it moves towards a new steady state. Inequality is related to the saving rate because saving rates rise with income, and the higher a person's income is, the higher his or her saving rate is likely to be. The total saving of a country is a sum of saving by people in all different income groups, and the higher the fraction of total income earned by richer people, the higher total savings of the country will be.
The effect on the accumulation of human capital is opposite to physical capital. The more unequal the distribution of income reflects lower human capital accumulation. Investment opportunities are limited to the amount one invests in themselves. When the income is redistributed from the rich to the poor, human capital accumulation will rise since the poor person will invest more in human capital compared to the rich who will invest less in physical capital. Moving on to income redistribution, the sources of income difference among countries include differences in accumulation of factors of production, as well as differences in productivity in which the factors of production are used. Overall, income inequality reduces efficiency of an economy. The government tries to help the cause by taking money from people with higher income, known as taxation.
Income earned prior to any taxes being collected is known as a worker's pre-tax income. The government taxes all workers the same fraction of their income as taxes. Workers with higher income pay more taxes than those with low income. The next government move is taking the revenue collected from these taxes and pays it back to the workers in equal amounts, known as a lump sum transfer.
There is social political unrest that erupts in response to income inequality. Countries with more unequal distribution of income have more pressure of redistribution, which slows economic growth. Crime also arises since we see poor people attempting to redistribute the income by themselves.
A key aspect of inequality is economic mobility, the movement of people from one part of the income distribution to another. Economic mobility can be measured in various time horizons, like year to year or decade to decade. Economists often examine intergenerational mobility as the change in the economic status of families from one generation to the next. Marriage also affects economic mobility through associative mating, where people marry those of their own economic and social class. Occasionally, people marry for love, which can mix economic classes, and a child cannot grow up in both economic classes of its parents. And that concludes how accumulation of physical and human capital, income redistribution, and economic mobility affects income inequality.
The benefits perceived as arising from income inequality include improvements in morality, marital fidelity, and a belief that the whole population can self-improve, as well as encourage democracy.
Money isn't the source of all happiness, so I think you can have a low income and still be equally as happy as somebody who has a high income, and there's plenty of high income people who are not happy, so I think it's pretty subjective.